Hey y'all, my name is Adina Barnett Miller, but I'm known to my students as Mrs. B. I've been passionate about West Virginia history for as long as I can remember, but my mom would tell you it all started when I was 3 years old and she bought me a West Virginia counties puzzle at Gino's Pizza. I've taught history in Ripley, West Virginia for over 20 years now, and I'm an adjunct professor who teaches college West Virginia history to high school students. Please join me for West Virginia History with Mrs. B, a field trip across the Mountain State to walk in the footsteps of those who came before us. Hey y'all, it is West Virginia History with Mrs. B, and today we're coming to you from Taylor County. We're in the little community of Webster, which is just south of Grafton, and we are visiting the Anna Jarvis home place. This is where Anna Jarvis, who is the mother of Mother's Day, was born, and where she was raised for the first few years of her life. And so, really excited because my history friends are with us. So I'll have them introduce themselves.
All right, I'm Brian Allman. I teach social studies at Buchanan Upshur High School.
I'm Richard Zakowski. I teach history at Grafton High School here in Taylor County.
Yes, and so Rich has not been here since when?
Since I was a child.
So I'm so glad they're tagging along as we come to learn more about the Jarvis family and about Mother's Day. So stay tuned. We're going to tell you all about this house and its history.
Alrighty, my name is Olive Ricketts. I'm the executive director here, but I also own it because I'm the one that came here and done it. So I am the director. The story begins with Anna's parents. Her mother's name was Anne Marie Reeves, not Anna. And she was born in Culpeper County, Virginia. Her father was a Methodist minister. So when Anne was 12, her father received a letter that stated he needed to move over the western mountains of Virginia to a little town called Philippi. So they came over the mountain. That's where she grew up. Granville was born right down here in Pruneytown. His father was a Baptist minister, and he too was asked to go to Philippi, where they actually built the Baptist church. So they both grew up in Philippi. They met and married in 1850, and they had a couple of children. When a friend of theirs began telling them about this little community called Webster, and they said, Webster is growing in leaps and bounds. You need to move over there for your mercantile business because it's not doing that well in Philippi. Well, we kind of chuckle today.
Right.
It's a town, we're nothing. But when they came over here to check it out, they liked what they saw, and they moved into a little cabin up here on the hill first and built this house in 1854 and moved in it the same year. He put his mercantile and his livery stable across the road. And there were already 43 families here. There was a big woolen mill, grist mill, hotel, a boarding house, a bordello saloon, and 3 churches.
Wow.
So they considered that a pretty booming town.
Yeah.
But the real reason was the Wheeling-Stanton Pike went through here. And it was a safe route to travel from north to south. So lots of people traveled through here on a daily basis. The train also did not go any further south here. The B&O stopped down here around the turn where the supply depot was. And again, if you ordered anything from up north, you had to come over here and pick it up by horse and wagon. And believe it or not, since I've been here since 93, I've met a lady that actually came over on a wagon to pick up with her father to pick up stuff.
Wow.
She was that old, that
Right,
age.
right.
And she said, I remember as a little girl coming over here picking up our stuff. Anyway, that being said, so this is the reason why they came here to stay. And the porch that you're sitting on is called a whistleway. And it's called that because she had a summer kitchen down here. And if you had any servants or slaves, they had to whistle as they carried the food from the summer kitchen into the house, so you would know that they weren't nibbling on your food.
Oh my
Now,
gosh.
she did not believe in slavery. In fact, we found out about 3 years ago that she was a big part of the Underground Railroad, which I did not know that for a long time. So, but I'll tell you more about that inside. Behind is the buggy back, where Granville was able to let the family step into the whistleway so they wouldn't get their feet dirty. And the pump and sink behind him is original to the house. So he gave his bride running water right in the house.
Wow.
Which is...
That was a big deal in the 1850s.
It was. And this one was added in 1932 by... Oh, excuse me a minute. My pump's running. I watered the flowers. So we can come inside and we'll continue from there.
Okay.
Okay, so we're in the kitchen. My husband Tom and I came here in 1993, and when we got here, we were told the house had not been lived in since 1958. Not one human has been here since. So it was in disrepair, but it really wasn't vandalized. People respected it enough not to bust windows and take out fireplaces and things like that. So we reproduced the wallpaper, put the original back up, reproduced the paint, painted it that color. And since we opened in '96, because it did take us 2 years to restore it, we've collected over 5,050 items in this museum. And everything's donated in a memory of someone, mostly mothers.
Right.
But the 2 tables in this room belong to the Jarvises, along with some of the older utensils you see hanging. And she always kept a real pineapple in her pie saver over there to let people know when you stepped into the kitchen that she could afford to feed you. So he just stepped on the trap door that goes under the kitchen, which is where Mrs. Jarvis hid the sleighs. So what's so unusual about this is that you can get 50 people down there.
Wow.
We did it for fun one time. We just put
You just wanted to see how many people she could get.
But see, it goes from this wall clear into the pantry there.
Oh.
And they couldn't, it looks like it's on the ground, and it acts like it's on the ground, but you can set up down there. Then through here is a cut stone wall that divides the other side of the basement where you can stand up, and that's where her spring house was.
Okay.
So a trough of water goes through there all the time. But you couldn't see under here. As long as they were quiet, when they went downstairs to check for people being down there, they couldn't find them. So it was an ideal place. But we had a bunch of kids one time, so we took a bunch of teenagers and put them down
there.
so they'd have some fun.
Wow. So how did you find out? Like what did you...
Well, there was a professor from WVU that was doing some really big research on the Underground Railroad. And we also have the Lincoln School out at Rosemont, which is the black school,
right.
Black school. And so we were out there doing some studies on that and giving the history of that. And so he said, you know, wow, let's go back here and I'm going to do some more research. Then he called me and he said, did you know that Mrs. Jarvis was a part of the Underground Railroad? And I said, no, but there's a trap door in the kitchen, in the floor. And he said, well, I'm coming back.
Okay.
So he came back and then we started looking into that part of it. But he's the one that actually really did all the research.
The legwork.
Yeah.
But to have someone confirm it.
Yeah, right.
That's a scholar.
Yeah, and so it was really fun finding that out, because all throughout everything that she said during the war, she didn't take sides. That was repeated a number of times in things that I've read and seen. And so it kind of made sense after you learned that she doctored the soldiers of both sides during the Civil War, and why would she be for slavery? You know?
Right,
so.
right. That's so well, and coming from Philippi to Grafton, it's 2 different mentalities.
Yeah, Confederate.
To Union. That's really interesting.
Yes, it is.
Okay. So what year did they come from Webster?
Huh?
What year did they come from Webster? To Webster?
In 1854.
Okay.
1854.
Okay. All right, that would make sense. Okay.
Yeah.
Very interesting. I just finished reading a book last night about George Berlin, who was the delegate from Buchanan to the Secession Convention. It was about that like daily life of he had to leave because everybody in Buchanan wanted to kill him because he voted against secession, and then after Virginia voted to secede, he went and had his vote changed, and the town did not agree.
No,
and so he was chased out of town. His wife was had parents in Philippi, and so she spent a great deal of time in Philippi because she didn't feel safe in Buchanan.
No, I'm just kidding.
No,
I'm so sweaty I don't think.
No, it's okay. It's all right.
Is everybody ready? Okay. We're
Yes,
gonna
yes, yes.
go down the grand hallway, and it's called that because every room does its
Yeah. This is quite nice.
People are surprised at how big the house is. They don't really think it's this big.
No, it looks very small from the room.
Wait for our filmer.
Yeah.
This, of course, is the parlor, and parlors normally were kept for a special company or guests such as a politician or a circuit rider. They didn't bring their kids in here very often. But the Jarvises ended up being married 52 years. And in all that time, they never went to church one time together. He went to the Baptist, she went to the Methodist. All the kids became Methodists too. I don't know why, but they did. So
Mom.
That'd be, yeah, probably because Mom spends more time with the kids. So they were allowed to come in here on a Sunday when they had their day off, but of course you know they didn't have any time off until Sunday. And they played and they sang. They played the piano, the violin, the harpsichord, dulcimer, flute, and of course the organ. Now this piano is an 1860 Steinway and it has all the original parts on it and does belong to Mrs. Jarvis. This kind of went with her to Grafton, then went with her to Philadelphia, then ended up coming back into Wheeling, and then we got it because Tom went and did a speech and we were looking for a piano. We didn't know who it belonged to. But this woman said they're getting ready to tear down the house. It's been in storage for 50 years. It's yours. 14 men and a lot of hard language coming in. It finally got here. But then I asked somebody to tune it from Morgantown, and he said, let's call Steinway. So we did, and he said, would you like to know who bought this piano? And it was Mrs. Granville E. Jarvis. So it came all the way back down to here.
Wow. And you didn't know till you brought it?
No, no.
I mean,
everything in this house does this. It comes.
Like it
So
just
anyhow,
was meant to be.
It still plays too. And it's not tuned. We didn't tune it because he said don't tune it. You have to replace a couple little parts. So this is Mrs. Jarvis, a picture of her taken in 1904, the year before she passed away, and she is confined to a wheelchair there. This is the last known picture taken of Anna Jarvis. It's probably in the 30s or close to 40s that this was taken, but she realized people took her picture, they interviewed her and wrote it down, and then they sold it to a magazine or a newspaper, and she didn't like commercialization.
Right.
So she never allowed another picture to be taken. This is a guy named Dr. James Edmund Reeves. He is Mrs. Jarvis's older brother. He happened to be 16. So when he came here, he met a few doctors, and Thayer and Dr. Kennedy both, and they talked him into becoming one. So he started the West Virginia Medical Association. He was instrumental in the national, became the very first pathologist in Chattanooga, Tennessee, and he wrote the book on how to use the microscope properly. So we finally got him in the West Virginia Hall of Fame, and now he's in the national. It took years, but we did it. So he was very, very important to us because in 1856, believe it or not, Taylor County had a plague in the month of December, and we lost 300 children in 1 month. And Mrs. Jarvis lost 3 of hers that month. So she called her brother and she said, please come and help me. And they formed the Mother's Day work clubs and began teaching sanitary conditions so that they could start saving lives. Right. So the Jarvises actually had 14 children. You don't read that at all anywhere except in the book that's over there. 14 children, and only 4 of them lived to become an adult. This is Josiah, the oldest son that lived. He's the only child that married. He married and had a son, and that son gave him 4 grandchildren. You see the 3 grandsons and a dog in the picture, but the granddaughter wasn't allowed to be in it because she was a girl. Oh, and on the mantle there is Reverend Josiah Reeves and Nancy Reeves, the parents of Anne Marie. And over here on the organ is a picture of Granville Jarvis up here, and this, oh, who knocked you down? Sorry, this is the other son that lived, Claude.
Oh, the one that was the taxi company owner.
Yes, he owned the first taxi. Well, he went to Philadelphia and opened the first taxi service up there called Quaker Cab. Him and Granville knew how to make money. They made money on everything they ever did. But Granville actually ran for mayor of Grafton 1 year, but he didn't get it. Rich, why didn't he get it?
Do you know?
Because he wanted to make too many changes too fast.
Oh.
That doesn't shock you.
No, it doesn't shock us. They don't change, do they? I've only been here since '93, and I've only got them to take 3 baby steps. The 2 chairs here are the Jarvises' original chairs with the original upholstery. And see, they took good care of things back in those days. These are the 3 children that died in the house, Alonzo, Annie, and Columbia. Now, for some odd reason, they put Columbia up at Lake Cemetery, but Alonzo and Annie is in our basement. They wrapped them in something. The forensics team couldn't tell me what, it wasn't enough left to tell me what they wrapped them, but they put them down under the dirt far enough, I guess, so they wouldn't smell, but they never moved them. So they're still there, 2 little kids, 1 and 2-year-old, laying side by side.
Are they marked down there?
Maybe that's why. Maybe that's why no one.
No,
lived in the house
the
in
marking is out there on the.
1950s.
Did you see that stone laying out there by the well house?
I was just wondering if they was any marking
A
down
headstone.
basement about it.
But the reason why we looked or had somebody come and scan the dirt, we didn't dig anything, we just scanned, was because it says here lies within this square
Oh.
two something small children or something like that. But anyhow, I wanted to know if they were really there, because you don't usually put a tombstone in the
Yeah.
basement where nobody sees it.
Right.
And maybe they were planning to move them later, but why they never did, I have no idea. But there are two of our ghosts that play around the house all the time. So the Bust of Anna's got a good story, and I'll tell you about that later, but this is a prototype. So we're gonna go upstairs and we'll be back to our dining room.
Wow. Dead kids in the basement. Wow.
Collection of unreal. This, of course, was called the toddler room. If you were 2 to 6 year olds, you kept them in this room because of the fire, the stovepipe came through from the cook stove.
Right.
And also the afternoon sun bakes this room pretty good. Now, this is, I call it the fun room because everything in it has a story behind it, and some of them are really, really sad. Some of them are really happy. But the doll in the bed was made especially to look like little Anna at the age of 2, and she's wearing authentic clothing. And because we've had 26 different countries to go through this house, now they're sending me dolls for their mother. So I have Jamaica, Finland, and Africa, and Germany so far. They've sent me dolls in memory of their mothers. So this is just a room that we tell everybody to look around and see if you recognize anything from your time period. And the cast iron train is really intriguing to most of the guys because it's the only one they've ever seen. It's made of solid cast iron. And it's really, really old. And my little monkey back there is about 100 and some years old. He was 85 when I got him. I'm gonna go in the next
Oh, there's
room.
Cabbage Patch Kids, so I got my childhood. We're good. We're good.
Got a Rudolph book in the back
Yeah,
corner.
I noticed that immediately. My eyes lit up. Wow. Oh, wow.
This was for the older children. If you were 7 to 11, you slept in this room. And I love school tours, especially like 4th and 5th graders, because I tell them they didn't have their own bed and they didn't have their own room. They would have slept 4 of them in this bed. And this was their wonderful place to go to the bathroom, our chamber pots. We have all kinds.
Where's Harlow? Just
Chives
scream.
and all this. So anyway, so I made this Anna Jarvis's room after college. Anna was born in the house, but in 1865, when the Civil War ended, Granville moved to Grafton, purchased the hotel, and opened his mercantile there. But he kept this one for a number of years and let one of his employees live in it. So he sent all 4 of his children to college. Anna went to the Augusta Female Academy in Stanton, Virginia, where she ran into Woodrow Wilson, because if you go there today, it's called Mary Baldwin College, and it's right beside of Woodrow's birthplace.
Well, how ironic, since he's the one that...
That's why I said they became good friends. It never says anywhere that Anna ever dated, had a gentleman caller, a beau, a suitor, nothing about a man. But she said Woodrow and her were friends.
They were chums.
And
Yeah.
so when he became president, he's the one that signed Joint Resolution 263 on May 8th, 1914, making it a legal holiday for the very first time.
Oh.
If I ever get back down, I get to take Woodrow's inauguration picture down to their museum because they gave it to me a long time ago. But I put it in here until I ever get down there again. But anyhow, so Anna came back to Grafton. She taught school for about 7 years, but she really didn't like that either. So because Claude was already in Philadelphia, she went there in 1894. And she got a degree in German, by the way.
Wow.
I know we had a lot of German immigrants that came here, but I don't know why you want to teach them German. But anyhow, she got a degree in German. And this is all of her little records from the school over there. And so, anyhow, she didn't like it. So she moved to Philadelphia, and she worked at the Fidelity Mutual Insurance Company in what they called the literary department. I've never found out what that means. But over here on the wall is her graduation class picture, her home in Philadelphia, her burial site, and also almost everything in this room belongs to Anna Jarvis. The shoes, the hats, that coat, the Christmas card, postcards, people that sent her, things that she sent out to other people, they've been bringing it back. And over here where she gets her, she would go buy a new outfit and have a picture taken, but as soon as she got done, she'd take it back and get her money.
Huh.
She was a tightwad. But
She was a tightwad, but she blew through all her money.
no, not really.
Did she not?
No.
Okay. I'm
I'll
interested.
tell you
We're
why.
going to talk.
I'll talk.
We're going to talk. I want to know
So
more.
she actually in 1902 when Granville Jarvis died, he left her $400,000 cash and 7,000 acres of land in this county.
Holy moly.
And this was found out by accident. I was going through people that they sued, and they got sued, and that's when I found that he owned 7,000 acres in this county. If you go back on a lot of the original deeds on old Route 50, that's where he owned, and he still got property out there.
Wow.
I don't know who's in charge of it, because they won't tell me that.
Okay.
Because they're getting money off of it. They have to share it with me, so they wouldn't tell me. So she was a member of Quota International, and this is the last little conference she went to. They gave them all the little Q earrings and all this little silly hat. And this hat she wore in 1932. Governor Connolly wrote her a letter and asked her if she would come and help dedicate the Capitol. It was newly built. She said, no way. I don't like West Virginia. I don't like Grafton. She said the lawyers and bankers were stealing all of her money. If they took a fee out of her bank account, she chased McGraw down the street one day with a chair. She was going to hit him because he took $5 out.
Wow.
So anyway, I guess he finally convinced her that this was important. That he really, because she was very well known then.
Right.
When we came here, nobody knew who Anna Jarvis was. So anyhow, she wore that hat, and she did a beautiful speech, and she dedicated our Capitol to all mothers everywhere. Not just her mother, but all mothers everywhere.
That's a big thing.
And she is the only woman in that Capitol. If you go down there, you'll see a bust of her that took 9 months to get there.
Wow.
Because I guess they don't want women in it. This is her in her 20s. And this was doll that was made to do a fundraiser to sell to help restore the house.
Oh,
And so,
okay.
because we didn't know what grants were or nothing like that, so this lady made her. She's number 0. So there's 10 of them out there before our doll maker died. This one's in her 70s, and that one down there is age 8. And of course, this is Anna's dress. I don't know how it got in the middle, but I have new volunteers, and these are 2 wedding gowns, so they're not hers. So, but
She
this
was
is why we have so much.
tiny.
Yeah, they were all tiny. People were very tiny. You didn't hardly see any heavy people back in those days.
Wow. Interesting.
And she traveled all over, so we got a scrapbook over there where, like she had tea with the Queen of England. She got to go to the opera with her. She saved everything. She was in
That's okay.
anyhow, she went to Holy Land, and she brought back stuff from that.
Wow.
She really traveled extensively after she got Mother's Day started. And as you come out, these things are everywhere. These are origamis or cranes.
Yes.
And I didn't understand why Japan sent me a letter asking me if they could send me these. Didn't really understand, so again I had to go to WVU and get somebody to translate it. And so they sent me 1,000 cranes in honor of 1,000 deceased mothers and asked me if we could put it in the house in memory of them. Because the story, you know the story behind them, don't you? The
No.
origamis? Because we dropped the big bomb and cancer was prevalent over there for the next 50 years. If you could make 1,000 cranes before you died, you would live. But if you couldn't, then you died. So this little girl got to 999 and she still died of cancer. So that story became real popular. Here's her 5th Christmas picture.
Look at her.
Not happy at all. And this is a split level. In this house, it's unusual, but he decided to do it this way to keep the noise of his children down there away from the company room. And this is,
Oh, this ceiling's high in here.
and this is the company room.
Wow.
This room, I kind of just have a lot of different things. We have a men's Civil War jacket, a wedding jacket dated 1847. We've got a little bit of coal mine history starting to come in. People want us to save that. People throw everything away.
Yeah.
And because of that, so much is starting to come here. Now Josiah, the oldest son I told you about, he decided to be a doctor also. He doctored in a little town called Fairview, West Virginia, which is right outside of Fairmont. And his entire family is buried at the St. John's Methodist Church. So this all came out of his office when they tore it down. My favorite piece in this room, I don't know if you can see it. Let's see, I think this light is working. If I can find the switch. This is my little chamber pot in disguise.
Ooh.
And I thought this was a cool one. So this was a wedding gift to a lady, and she left her mother gave it to her, and then she kept it for a long time too. And then she finally decided to give it to us. This is the mercantile ledger book that belongs to Granville. And I said, how can you leave $400,000 when all you ever got paid with was chickens, eggs, flour, stuff like that when he was in the mercantile business? Every now and then people pay money. Well, after we became a state, he dabbled in coal, real estate, and timber. That's where he made his money.
Yep.
So over here is a visible writer. And that's exactly what it's called, visible writer. And it belonged to Colonel Kelly. Colonel Kelly and Dumont actually planned the battle in this area, and of course marched on Philadelphia on June 3, 1861. So when the war ended, Kelly did his memoirs on this, and this is a picture of his burial site that his family sent to me. And over here's the B&O corner. They threw this away. They threw the desk, the typewriter, and check writer away. So we went and Darlene Ford and I've done a lot of dumpster diving. So we saved this, and we have in our historical society, we have a area now that's all B&O history. So this will be being moved to the B&O Railroad part of the history. This is Willard's plate that he gave to everybody when he dedicated that big, beautiful hotel that we're letting fall down in 1912.
Yeah.
And he let everybody have one to eat on. And I don't know why people didn't keep them, because it's real gold. But this is the only one I've found. Nobody else has seen it, heard of it. But this lady from Virginia that was in her 90s mailed it to me and said, I think this belongs in Grafton. So of course it'll go, like I said, into the B&O section of our historical society.
Wow.
So it's been I get a lot of things I have no idea where they come from.
This painting too. That is amazing to me, that plate. Look at that. Right there.
And keep that so that we're all. This here is the master bedroom, the room that Anna was born in on May 1st, 1864, right in the middle of the war. She was the 10th child, but by this time all the little girls in the family had already died. There was 2 that came later, Lillian and Helen. So Josiah, being 11, carved her name into the mantle here, which we found under 9 layers of paint. So he probably got spanked later. So these are Mrs. Jarvis's shoes, her trunk, her dresser, and the things back in the shadow box along with her marriage certificate, and the picture that hung above Mrs. Jarvis's bed until her death in 1905 called Faith, Hope, and Charity. As you can see, she was a real angel, cherub, Christian woman, and she lived every moment as a Christian person. And she could talk the devil up and give him a pitchfork. I really believe this. So anyway, as they lowered her into the grave, Anna's standing there remembering all the things that her and her mother had done. One of the things she remembered was her mother repeatedly saying, we need a day for mothers to rest. It wasn't going to be called Mother's Day. It was just, let me have one day, sit on the back porch, don't bother me. So she started, as soon as the ceremony was over, she went home, she started writing letters to anybody that would listen. She hoped churches, organizations, business organizations, anything that would listen. Well, to no avail. I've got about probably maybe 50 letters that says, Dear Miss Jarvis, we love and revere our mother, but she does not need a day off. So wow. I said that really aggravated her, man. That's why she worked even twice as hard.
Right.
Her birthday and my birthday's the same, so we're both Tauruses. We don't quit.
Oh, well, that
We
says
do not
enough.
quit.
Yeah.
So anyhow, she continued on until, of course, it did become a holiday, and then she continued until it became an international holiday. She did travel in other countries and try to promote it. Of course, it's really a lot of fun to see how they promote or how they do their Mother's Day with us. And because it's fall in Australia in May, so it was different when these people come, and I ask them how they do it. I ask them what kind of flower do you, because ours is the carnation,
right,
since that was the favorite flower of the mother. So as time marched on, in 1932, she finally realized she quit spending money on flowers for the shrine after it went up and up and up. It went from a penny to 2 pennies to 6 pennies, and she said, no more flowers. So she realized everything was being commercialized. So she started accosting people, going around breaking up Mother's Day meetings. She wrote Mrs. Roosevelt a very nasty letter and told her she had no right to use the word Mother's Day in any sentence because it was patent. It was. But anyway, she finally realized by 1943 that nobody was giving up that money.
Right.
So she became a recluse.
Mm.
Now she had owned 2 houses at that time, and she hardly ever left the house or let anybody in her houses. But one day she must have got up in a bad mood and put together a petition, was going to the door getting it signed. I like the way they described it to me when I first moved here. They said she was wandering the streets naked and blind. And I thought, okay. So anyhow, after I found out that what she did was she had a petition. She was asking people to sign it to rescind Mother's Day. And she wasn't naked and she wasn't blind.
Right.
So, but I guess the florist and card people put her there to shut her up.
Right.
And of course you could do that in those days. You could put us there for any reason.
Especially a woman. Especially a woman
All
that doesn't
women.
have a husband.
Well, they could have a husband, it wouldn't matter. They're the
Well,
ones that put us there.
but Claude's gone too, right?
Yeah.
At that point?
Yeah, well, they just said she was insane, and they took her to the
Sanatorium.
sanatorium. And that's where she ended up dying on November 24th, 1948. And it says, alone, heartbroken, and broke. Now, I went to the sanatorium, and in there was a dollar bill on the ceiling. And I asked the lady that was letting us see the room what it was for, and she said that a little boy had sent it to Anna. And that they had never taken it down. It wasn't her room anymore, of course, but they'd never taken it off the ceiling. But he said, thank you for starting Mother's Day. So she gave me the card. I should have took the dollar, but I didn't think of it at the time because they tore it down after we left. But anyway, that being said, the people had to pay every month to keep her there because they knew if they didn't, she would get Mother's Day rescinded because she wouldn't stop until she did. So that being said, the lawyers, when we first came here, a lawyer came from Clarksburg and he gave me a whole file of papers that had to do with Anna Jarvis and her business. And one of them was her funeral cost was $647.26. And they described her as having auburn hair. And the secretary went back and said, no, it wasn't auburn, it was gray, and the dress wasn't violet, it was purple. She kept writing all the right stuff that the man had said, and she was correcting it. But it still cost $647.26. But anyway, it was fun to read all that stuff that they had been charged to do for her. But now, they never told me who actually was still in charge of all these properties that's still out on Route 50, that's still in their names. Or Bramble's name, not anybody else's. So, but it doesn't say anybody, because there's no heirs left. I mean, there's nothing. There's nothing.
Well, someone's paying the property tax.
Somebody has to be, but I don't know. I never really got interested enough to go find out that information, because when he sent me the file and I read all of that, I figured, don't worry about it. But that being said, of course, Anna continued until it became an international holiday, and we do celebrate it in several countries today around the world, and she should be happy, but I don't know.
I don't know either.
So this is the parents again, and that's Grandma and Claude again. Our matchlock is the oldest piece. It goes clear back to Jamestown era. And we show everybody our old horsehair and lime walls. That's what it looked like when we came. We didn't restore it, but it's always cold in there, and that's where Alonzo and Annie E. lives. The little 2 kids that go through the house and tear up things for me.
Yeah, it didn't shock me.
Misplaced things, do all that kind of stuff. The spinning wheel over there in the corner, these are some of the sad stories, as I said. A gentleman came and he asked me if I would take the spinning wheel. It had been in his family for 7 generations. And he said, my daughters do not want it. So I said, well, yeah, I'll take it. I said, I'm so sorry, because I do feel sorry for families that they don't want to keep their stuff.
Yep.
So I put it in, and then he gave me that dresser in there, and then he gave me the copper kettle. So 2 weeks after that, he died of cancer. And I said, the daughters could have taken it just for 5 minutes. And if they then wanted to throw it away, they could have.
Yeah.
But they broke his heart. He was so broken up about this.
Right, because they were his heirlooms.
Right.
It was all he could
it was kept in his
pass on.
family all those generations.
Yeah.
And then not to be able to, but I know why they didn't want it. You barely tap it and it all comes apart because there's no screws or nails in it. So you have to be very careful how you use it. It's just put together with dowels. That's it.
Huh. Interesting.
And our coverlet on the beds are all about 140 to 150 years. This coverlet here was made here in Webster in 1861. when Mrs. Jarvis met a woman, her neighbor, and she made this for her and gave it to her as a gift. So it's been in the family ever since. Again, that came all the way back around.
Wow.
And these are 24 of Anna's hankies that this lady made. It's called a mother's handkerchief quilt out of it for me. Because I saw one that she made out of her mother's, and I thought it was such a cool idea. I said, would you do one for Anna's house? And she said, yeah. And the doll on the bed is another doll that somebody made to look like Anna, but she gave her a lot of hair. And these two dresses are wedding gowns. The custom was to make your dress any dark color you wanted it to be. Why are you turning? And because once you married, you were not to go out in white in public again. So because of that, they made them I have a lot of black, but I also have brown, burgundy, and green. And they wore them as church and funeral clothing. So of course we didn't have a bunch of clothes back in those days.
Right.
Had to fit in really well. Do you have any questions up here?
No.
You sure? This is Mrs. Jarvis's favorite son. His name is Thomas. He's in the bottom picture there. I kind of get the idea that he might have been born with Down syndrome. He was a special needs child, but he did live to be 12. But when she was dying, she was always calling out to Thomas. And that was one of the reasons. Tom was my husband, and my birthday was on the 1st, so that's what made us take the house. You want a picture of him?
One of those things, like just meant to be.
Yeah, we were working on another project, and we gave that up and did this instead.
It's something that had like a little closet built in at that time.
Yeah, they're called presses because it really pressed your clothes if you had to.
Yeah, because it's very rare for a house to even have a
Even have
closet.
one.
So like in 1940s.
And they have one here and the guest room. Now the other 2 rooms they didn't put it in for some reason, but this, and we don't know why this was built. After we took the rest of the plaster off of it, we left it so we could show that they made their own bricks. And then why was this here? You know, it was like a space. But maybe he.
What if he had it covered?
Yeah, he did have, it was covered. It was covered with plaster, but he could have fixed it so he could hide things back
Yeah,
there.
that's what I was just thinking.
Private, yeah.
Yeah.
But it was, there was a guy that researched all these units that were here, and he did a 15 years of research, and then his wife left him, so he gave me the book. So she wouldn't get any money out of it.
Oh, wow.
Okay, any further questions?
It's so interesting. So how long did Anna actually live here?
She was a year and a half old when she left.
Okay, so it's kind of like Pearl Buck's house, because
Yeah,
she was born there and then was there for like 9 months.
Yeah, she was here about a year and a half before they moved to Grafton. And I don't know why he really wanted to move to Grafton and get a hotel. Of course, it burnt later, but he didn't own it then. He'd already sold it. They've lived 5 different places in Grafton. The last one's still standing.
Really?
Yeah, it's up behind the shrine. It's a real pretty blue house on.
Okay.
We'll make sure we.
Go up Luzader and then make a right or make a left.
Okay.
But it's a real pretty house, and they just kind of modernized the outside, but it still looks exactly like it did on the outside. And another thing I found out on that was she sued the electric company, Mrs. Jarvis did, because they wanted to come through that property and put electric in, and she said, no, I don't want my flowers disturbed. Well, of course, she lost because you don't fight the electric company no matter what year it is. And so she, but the house is there, and it's really pretty. The people that live there has always taken really good care of it.
Oh, that's neat. That's really neat.
So that was the last place they lived.
In Grafton, before they went to Philadelphia.
Yeah, before
Where
she
did
came.
they have the hotel?
Huh?
Where did they have the hotel?
It was called the Central Hotel. It was was it that the one that was on the railroad track itself?
Yeah.
It's close in there.
Like the Latrobe?
Right. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So Latrobe
It was
Street.
part of that 1885 burned down Grafton.
Yeah, so Latrobe Street was like the main street. This is where all the businesses and
That's where the bordellos were. And
Yeah.
It was called the Red Light District, but they had the best hot dogs down in that little shop by the Red Light District, so people went there anyway.
Yeah.
Oh,
Interesting.
Darlene Ford can tell you about it. She did a whole thing on Latrobe. I didn't know any of it until she did all that work. She's going to do a presentation on it again.
You'll have to go and let us
Because
know.
it is
so much,
very
yeah.
interesting what was on Latrobe Street.
Oh, I bet. Well, because Grafton was a hop and bop place.
Yeah, and it just amazes you when you go back and start looking at all their pictures. We're scanning them right now, the rest of the pictures that haven't already been done. And I just can't believe how I mean, it was like, well, for the Monster Fest, how busy it was and you could barely get through. That was like every
day.
Friday night, especially.
That's like all these little towns.
Oh yeah, I think
around
what
like
30 trains came through a day.
Well, it's funny because
Passenger trains.
Went away to college to Indiana because I'm originally from Elkins. I rode the Amtrak in to Grafton. Never thought I'd ever live in Grafton.
Right.
And so I rode, the last time I rode it, that was going to be the last one that came through. They stopped the Amtrak. It's wow, I love it. I love riding that thing down here.
Yeah, I have a friend that grew up in this area, and she went to college at Shepherd, and she took the train.
Yeah, it was fun. That was real fast for me to take the train. I didn't have to drive, and I didn't have to worry about anything. Last time I brought the kids, I was married and had kids.
Wow.
So
Well, very
me and
cool.
the kids rode the train in.
That's so cool. Well, thank you so much.
You're
Do you all
welcome.
have
This is
any
amazing.
questions?
Thank you.
I'm so glad we got to have this experience. This is really, really special.
And there was a documentary done, and I still have it. One of these days I want to put it on CD because it's on the VHS by Vancouver. And they came down here and spent $150,000 on this documentary because not only they interviewed me in there, but they put the lights outside through the windows to film it. They didn't do any filming with the lights inside. It was really interesting. And then, they asked me my questions, but they not only asked me, but they traveled all the way through and ended up in Philadelphia on this documentary. So someday I got to get it on CD so we can show people.
Oh, okay.
The only thing, it has a bad word at the very end. Who's that actress? I can't remember her name now. But she's always on a mission of starting trouble somewhere. But anyhow, at the very end, she said a really good bad word. And I said, why did you leave that in there? I don't want the whole thing. But it was part of the documentary.
Understood. Well, thank you so much.
You're very welcome.
Hey y'all, I hope you enjoyed your tour of the Anna Jarvis Birthplace Museum, and just want to let you know, sometimes the camera overheats, especially when it's one of those 90-some degree summer days here in West Virginia, but you should definitely come and check this place out. It's only $5 to visit. All the money goes right back into the museum and to support their work here. So if you want to come visit, this is on US 119 south of Grafton, between Grafton and Philippi. So it's a great tour, and Olive, who is the owner, she's such a treasure. She knows so much history, and she's so educated and so passionate about Anna Jarvis. So thank you so much for joining us. Thanks, y'all, for watching. Please like, share, and subscribe to West Virginia History with Mrs. B on both Facebook and YouTube.